So next we have the Neighborhood Food Network call, and Anne has arranged for a very special guest. Anne, do you want to take it away with the introduction and or have
Sure, we're going
himself?
to be talking with Clint Brauer, who's a third generation farmer from Wichita, Kansas, and he has developed these bots for well, I'm going to let him explain it because I'll know I'm completely mess it up, but I just think it's so cool. And so Clint, you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then we can talk about what you're doing.
Yeah, and I've got a few slides I could take you through too, if seeing helps. But
Can he share screen, Zen?
Oh yeah, sorry. Let me set that up so he can be a co-host. And thank you for waiting patiently, Clint, and being on our call. We so appreciate that.
No worries. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah.
This is one of the little robots. So what we're doing, you guys are talking about pesticides, and the subcategory is herbicides. And so these robots, what this one is doing, and we're doing about 6,000 acres this summer, and then we'll grow rapidly from here. But we basically eliminate most of the need to spray after you plant the crop on fields, whether they're organic or not. And so that's what these robots do. So I've been building this for about 5 years, and I'll take you through kind of my background. The reason I got into this, I grew up in Kansas, and this is my dad on the left. And about 14 years ago, I was in LA, and my dad came down with Parkinson's. And so I decided to move back to Kansas. And over time, sort of research led me to believe possibly it came from farm chemicals, herbicides in particular. And so I went on a journey, and this is MG Honor Farms. MG is this is my grandma's farm, and MG, it's in her honor. And so I went on this mission to get chemicals out of farming. And so that was about 14 years ago. So I grew them. I never organic certified, but I only use OMRI certified inputs, and built greenhouses and grew vegetables outdoors, not at the scale that I think Mark's going to talk about, but learned enough, did CSAs, home delivery. And so the idea is going on this journey, and I was hoping there's a way to do it without technology. And then, built these greenhouses, put learning disabled kids to work, helped my cousin build a hydroponic facility, so on and so forth, and so on and so forth. And I never allowed any, non-organic materials to be used in the production. And so what I got into was I talked to a friend of mine, and don't everyone boo, but it's one of my closest friends, is a GMO scientist. And I'm a big believer in you embrace both sides and you learn what you can, you move forward. And he's a great human being, I will tell you that. And he said, look, what you need to do is get into no-till farming, but figure out how to get the chemicals out, and then you will keep the carbon in the ground, and it improves the nutrient density of the food and that kind of stuff. So I said, all right. So I researched it and said, okay, well, let's see if we can do both. And that led me to regenerative farming, which is sort of a buzzword right now. And so what I do on my farm is we grow without tillage. We do things like this as a cover crop right here. So these sheep like this grazed that cover crop 2 or 3 times before I went and planted a crop into it. And then we moved the sheep around. This dog really didn't help me very much with it, but he was there in the picture. It's good marketing, and I loved that dog. I have another one now. So, but and grew sheep, and we grazed the sheep, and they're pretty much grass-fed sheep, and they graze on my cropland. And so the idea is that you can raise animals and grains and vegetables or whatever on your same cropland, and you build it up. And that's regenerative farming does. 2015, I started partnering with a pet food company named Canaday, and so started building a regenerative supply chain for them. And so this year we're doing 700 acres of grain sorghum, and when the farmers grow them, they're all no-till farmers. They're all on some path to regenerative, but when they grow the sorghum post-plant, in terms of weed control, they have to run our robots, which they're happy to do, because as of this year, they're actually working pretty darn well now.
So do you have an engineering background? I mean, how did you think of this?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I don't have engineering degrees, but I'm just, think about stuff. And then I go find people who actually have engineering degrees, and we get things done. So that's, I come up with most of the ideas so far. I'm waiting for the day when I'm not having to come up with the ideas, but so far, they're all mine so far. So, but great team. We have a great team. So we built this supply chain, and that kind of, set that, and you could see they've used it in their marketing, and you could see regenerative agriculture is becoming very popular. I'm sure you guys have heard the term, and regenerative organic now. But you could see, I mean, you guys were talking about this. There's a lot of chemicals involved in it, right? Herbicides, and this is in Canada, but this is the percent, that tested positive for some sort of.
Wait. Hang on one second. So when you say regenerative, that there's chemicals in it, you're testing food that is claiming to be regenerative and they're still showing up with chemicals.
No, regenerative agriculture is pretty dependent on herbicides still currently. So, and that's
Okay.
one of the.
So if we want to clarify, you're not saying regenerative organic.
I am not.
Yeah. Okay.
And so my goal is to make all regenerative farming organic like. And so there is
Because you understand, we don't accept the word regenerative if it includes chemicals, because the chemicals destroy the soil and do not actually make it legitimately regenerative. So that to us, that's like a misnomer to call
yeah,
something.
that is correct. So I would say it's a little more complicated than that. And I work with a lot of leading soil scientists, but I would agree. My path is to get the chemicals out of farming, period.
Okay, we appreciate that so much. Thomas has a question before you continue. I just want to double check because it might be pertaining to a slide that you showed previously. Thomas, you had a question?
Yeah, my question quick is, he mentioned no-till, and in my study of this issue over all these years, no-till was kind of a double speak ploy used by chemical and maybe GMO farmers. They said they use no-till, and what they really meant was, yeah, we don't till the soil for weeds, we just poison them with herbicides and pesticides.
Yeah. So it's not a conspiracy. That is the way that it is done. And so that's why I created Greenfield, was to basically make it without the chemicals, but retain all the positives of no-till. And so that's the journey I'm on. Get rid of the chemicals and the positives.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Okay, keep going. This is very concerning.
Organic that can scale is what I'm looking to do. And so, and I realize it's very hard to do. And so, here's all the stuff that you guys, I think, already know a bit about, listening to the discussion. So, but it's not just, it's bad for us, but now it actually economically isn't working too well for the farmers either. And everyone knows this. And so we're, working through that, and this is what we came up with. So the robot you saw, here's one that has a face on it, but basically just what I'm saying, we have this first step, and it is to reduce and possibly in some fields eliminate the herbicides after you start growing your crop, after you plant it. Now, before you plant it, guys are still using chemicals. I'll talk about that in a minute. So, but that's the mission I'm on. And so we have these robots, we have 20 of them, we have 2 fleets. So any day we're knocking out anywhere between 40 and 100 plus acres now and reducing the herbicides. And this is what the, a fleet looks like. And I'll show you a video at the end of this. Now we're adding the ability for these same robots to go in the crop field, and they can foliar feed the crop. So I like to use sea kelp on my crops. So if we can put sea kelp on there to help it grow, then we can zip along and apply that, or whatever the farmer wants to do. Then we can apply what's called cover crops, but those between the rows, right? So if I'm going to grow my grass-fed sheep in the winter, right? I'm in Kansas, a lot of things are not green. So what I'm going to feed them in the winter? Well, if you put a cover crops between the rows, which is a major staple regenerative farming, if you can put it before your cash crop is mature, right? So if you go back here, another 3, 4, or 5 weeks, we might go in there and put this cover crop with the same robot between those rows. And while this crop is finishing, which is grain sorghum, that cover crop is growing.
How is it doing the weeding? How is it?
Right now, the mechanism on those robots I just showed you is very simple. It simply cuts them right at the ground, and we'll do this a couple times during the crop season.
Okay.
Currently. So it was the simplest thing I could come up with. It's not perfect, but as I say, the farmers who use herbicides, the herbicides fail all the time. And we've built this to be lower cost and less risky than herbicides, actually. So, so cover crop planting, if you put these in between the rows, so we'll go in there middle of August in a field like I was showing you, and we could put that cover crop in, and it'll start growing in middle of August, so it gets more sunshine. And so you can get 3 times more growth of the grass. You can put the carbon underground, and it actually reduces your fertilizer use over time too. And so when you do that, then you can graze your animals on that fresh green rye or wheat or multi-species, whatever you do over the winter. And so we're adding that capability right now. And then the last thing is soil testing. And all of this, again, is to reduce the amount of synthetics, the amount of chemicals doing. And so if you better understand what your crop needs, then you can reduce that over time. And normally farmers right now, every 4 years, a conventional farmer will go test. We're going to try to get that down to 1 or 2. And we're going to have this in field by around the end of the year. So the idea is these little robots can reduce the cost for the farmer, reduce the risk, and at the same time get reduce the chemicals and on a path to get rid of them.
That sounds fantastic. I'd like to just dive into that a little bit more. You said these robots cost less than the chemicals that they would normally buy. Do you have some figures or numbers in comparison on that, or percentages? Can you
Yeah,
talk?
I should have kept that slide in here. Of
Okay.
course, we had to raise money.
'Cause
So
we moms, we talk a lot to farmers, to, at a farmers markets, to grocery store owners, to people like that. And when they tell us, oh, well, we need this tool of glyphosate, we need these tools, we can't do without it, it's the cheapest way. We'd really like to be armed with, no, that you don't need it. There's other ways to do this that are less expensive. And so we'd like to be armed a little bit better with that. Can you give us some more information about that?
you're right. Those are the arguments. And I think for most farmers, those are true stories, unless they're willing to go organic and go to all that trouble. So, but no, basically we charge farmers right now on a per acre basis. And so they'll pay some per acre fee, we'll run it, and they get billed at the end of it if they're happy with the results, which they all
Oh,
are
I
now.
see. So they don't have to buy the devices. They could just rent them.
No, I think I am a farmer, of course, and grew up farming. And one of my things, and I've been involved in a lot of businesses because I got in the internet early. And so I got one of the nice things being young in the internet, you got to see things you probably don't normally get to see early. And so I got to see a lot of businesses participate in a lot of things. And farming is one of the worst businesses I've ever seen. It's super capital intensive and it's super low margin, right? And so, trying to address that, and one of the things is equipment's very expensive to capitalize it and to own it. And so, we think on a per acre basis, then it helps them. They just pay for it as they incur the service, and keeps them from spending so much money. Or instead of capitalized debt, they can just do an operating note, which gets repaid the minute they harvest the crop.
How many different farmers have tried this so far?
This year we're running on about 20 something different farms. So this is the 3rd year the farmers are paying us. And so next year we're going to expand considerably.
Great. That's great. And how do you plan on doing that? What type of avenues of marketing are you using right now? Do you mind me asking?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a few things going on here we could talk about, but the first thing is, just the farmer hiring Greenfield, right? And so what we do with that, the primary mechanism is we work with one of the largest grain cooperatives in the United States based here in Kansas. And they actually got involved with this a couple of years ago, and they want to give this alternative to their farmers. And so they're actually helping us roll out on these acres. So they probably sold half to 3/4 of the farms this year for us.
Oh, okay.
And they actually provide some of the back end operations. There's one thing everyone should understand. There's not a single farmer in the world who wants to use the chemicals. Not one. It's an economic issue, and that's what it is. And it's a difficulty. Organic farmers are work their butts off, and it's very risky and it's very difficult. And so that's what I'm trying to make it easier to do that. And without tillage, because we do seem to have a carbon problem, as you were talking about before. And so that's the model. Now we also work with food brands, and we've got a couple that we're working with right now, and Canada being one of them. And so we basically bring the farmer a premium, and we figured out how to kind of cut out some of the brokers in between that, so the farmers could get the premium that the financial brokers did. And so we provide them an incentive to farm on this regenerative path and using our robots to reduce the amount of chemicals over time.
And do you do that with a certification? Is that it that they get?
Honestly, right now we just work with the farmers and say, for example, we don't allow, if they want that premium, they cannot spray glyphosate on the crop once it's been planted, right? And they can't spray any, so we have they're pretty low level, right? But we have
Is that a certification that they get that allows them that premium and charging higher prices? No?
No, right now we just know using the robots, they probably won't need it.
Right?
Oh, okay. And if If they want to use it, then they need to talk with us. Or if they want to use an insecticide, which no one has. That's one of the things with regenerative farming. And again, a lot of organic farmers are regenerative, right? Generally, the only difference you'll see is sometimes organic farms till a lot more, but not always. And so what we see there is when you have a really good crop rotation and cover crops and you're grazing, you typically over time, you see less and less of some of these issues. It's kind of like we were talking about before, I think it was Thomas was saying, is if you eat balanced and you do things the right way, maybe you need less medical help. And it's the same thing with the soil and our crops. If you do rotations and you're serious about it and you do cover crops and you break the insect cycles and you graze animals on it and you do all these things and you work with nature, not against it, then and you build up what's going on below the soil, in the soil, then you start minimizing some of these things, right?
What
And
about,
so-
and can you also minimize the fertilizer costs?
Yeah, fertilizer costs typically go down substantially over time for regenerative farmers, and that would include mine as well. What you're trying to do with this over time, if you don't till, is what you're trying to do is basically create a colony of microorganisms in the ground that feed your crop directly versus, and you feed the microorganisms with feed your crop versus feeding the crop directly with synthetics. That's what you're trying to achieve. And it's not an overnight thing to do it well, right? And so, but it's a process. And of course, the fewer other things you introduce, the fewer sides, the more effective it becomes over time as well. So I'm speaking really high level, but that's sort of the goal.
What are you sensing in the soil? You said you do soil sensing.
Yeah, so what we haven't yet, but we'll partner with a sensing partner. There's 3 or 4 out there that we were in discussions with. And so
What are
we
you
basically
Yeah.
we'll attach it to the robot. And so it can go out there in the winter and it can drill a hole and then put a digital probe in and it can tell, okay, what's going on down here? How does the farmer need to adjust what they're doing in the spring?
Is it for minerals or is it for heavy metals and pesticides?
We're keeping it very simple for now. We're not testing it, for negatives like that. We're testing it for, do they need to add a little bit of nitrogen or potassium or what's their carbon levels, stuff like that in the soil.
Do you have the capacity to test for heavy metals?
I'm sure someday somebody's going to have that, and it may already exist, and I just haven't met with them yet.
Okay.
And micronutrients.
Yeah, the nutrient thing is that's one of the great things about regenerative when you don't till, when you cover crop and is your nutrient density tends to go up over time. And so, your nutrient density can change too. Dr. Jill Clapperton, someone I get along with great, and she's been at the farm a bunch of times, and your nutrient density can be different depending on the seed you use as well, right? Even if they're all organic seeds. 10 different types of wheat, she showed me, had completely different nutrient profiles, right? So these things all work together. So
can I ask a couple more questions? Do the robots run on electric or battery? Or is Wi-Fi involved?
They do run on batteries. Yeah, they run on batteries.
Okay, but is Wi-Fi involved?
They are running right now off. We have to have a network there. So right now they run on a 4G network that we created edge of field ourselves, and it extends across the field. And when we're gone, the network goes with us. We shut it off.
Okay. Are you noticing any decrease of pollinators and bees during that time? How are the pollinators responding to the exposure to 4G on the field?
Oh, I have no idea. And to be honest with you, sadly enough, you don't see that many pollinators, right? And that's sort of the issue here, right? When we get back to more and more crops and pollinator strips and stuff into these farms, I'm sure we'll see more of it. But we don't see as bumblebees like I did as a kid. There used to be every, because I remember being terrified and running from them, right?
Yeah.
But what happens is, when folks go down these paths, is more and more of that comes back over time, but it's not overnight.
Okay, well, we hope that you can decrease the use of 4G as much as possible, because we see a lot of evidence to show that it does impact pollinators.
But he says he just has it set up while he's doing it, and then
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, I'm just putting a preference out there that if we can reduce the use, that would be great. And then also another question is, how does the robot distinguish between weed and crop? Is it just because it's in between rows, it's placed?
Yeah, we've kept it very simple. And, you know, my idea was, how do we get in there and start doing some good things and also help farmers solve a big problem? And the problem, by the way, we're solving for most of these farmers is there's a herbicide resistant weed called Palmer amaranth or pigweed.
Yep.
And that's become a big deal. And that's your herbicide space race is mostly in result, you know, as a result of that particular. And there's one called Mare's Tail in our area. It's a big deal. And there's other ones further north. And that's where your herbicide resistance, your genetic modifications, a lot of them, not all, but a lot of them are a result of the herbicides becoming resistant or the plants becoming resistant to that. And so there's no resistance to a spinning blade. And so that's the way we see it as the first step. Now, the thing I'm showing you right now is the next gen, which should be coming out next year. And that should get rid of the need for tillage or herbicide before you plant the crop. In effect, eliminate all herbicides. So
How did you do that?
in a small test on my farm a year ago, and we actually found it to be very effective. It does need to use cover crops, but I just wanted to meet with you guys to let you know, there's all these negatives happening, but there's a lot of positives, and there's a lot of farmers that want to adopt what we're doing, and they're starting to believe in what we're doing, and I believe the solutions are coming for a lot of these things.
Great. It's great to hear.
Well,
know,
one of the things that we were interested in is things that we can do, because this is obviously not for the home gardener, things that we can do at the farmers markets by talking to the farmers and suggesting them if they've checked out Greenfield robotics. And so
Yes, and I think there's a few things. One is right now, so I define the problem, guys. They're the amount that 98% of all soybeans raised in the United States have herbicides.
Yeah.
98%. And by the way, that's about 90 million acres. To give you the idea, when we talk about farmers markets and stuff, there's tens of thousands of acres of lettuce. So I'm out there, there's corn, there's sorghum, there's soybeans, and there's 250 million acres of that in cotton. And so my goal is to reduce all that as fast as I can. Now, these are small machines, as you might expect. They will probably work for smallholder vegetable farming at some point. And certainly, given that I have a background in that, I'm interested in that. But I want to reduce the amount of chemicals we have, period, flowing into our water systems, in our rainfall, in the soil, because I can see what it's doing, and I think we all do. And you would not find a farmer alive who would disagree with that. The only place you would disagree is if you said convert now, and I'm not going to pay you to help you convert.
Okay,
so,
Clint, so who knows about you in like the ag committees and the White House and all that kind of stuff? And would you be interested in coming with us to a congressional briefing in the Capitol regarding getting rid of glyphosate use?
Yeah, I mean, I've never done anything like that. I don't know, but
it's fun.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're going to
Doesn't
talk
sound
about
fun
it.
to me.
We're going to talk about it because we
But I
need,
have a different definition of fun, but yeah.
we need to bring solutions, and the politicians who are being told that glyphosate and these pesticides are the only tool available need to be convinced that there are other tools available, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I agree. And we had, I won't say who, but we had a politician out here about 2 weeks ago, and they were sort of floored.
Oh,
watching
come
it.
on, tell us.
No, not yet. But I think that,
We're going to talk
yeah,
about
and we're running 6,000 acres this year. There's 250 million acres, but
Right.
yes.
Okay. All right. All right. But you got to start somewhere, and you're starting and you're doing it. You've been doing it for 2 years, you're saying.
I started this company 5 years ago, 14 years ago, started on this journey. So,
Okay.
but the
Yeah,
goal,
your story is very similar with Mark Doodla's as far as your father, and people are getting sick from these herbicides.
they're getting sick from a lot of things, and herbicides are a big one. And it's just an economic argument. And so I created the robotics to destroy that economic argument.
It's wonderful. We so appreciate your ingenuity and your creativity. Let's give him a round of applause, even though you guys can't hear.
Well, I'm gonna put the link in for you, everybody. So I already put the link in. I'll send it out in an email tomorrow. But yeah, take a look at his website. He's got some great like memes on here with some great things that. And what we want you guys to do is, yeah, when you're at the farmers markets, talk to these farmers. And
I think The one ask I would have is if you guys are okay with, following our LinkedIn profile and Facebook and that, and share things when you think they're worth sharing. We're not doing a lot of marketing yet because we've been so
Right.
ahead in getting this working. I mean, it seems
Well,
simple.
we know
Mowers,
a lot of
right?
farmers, and
It's
we
very hard. Yeah.
know a lot of farmers, and we know people who are working on policy on the Hill. And you just gave me I think what was a really good idea to bring you to the Hill when we have a congressional briefing about getting rid of glyphosate and how it can be done on a broad scale. And they are printing money right now, basically to give grants to people to do this. So I would, urge you to consider that there's definitely a solution available here. Thomas?
Yeah, I'll go to the Hill whenever you want. I've been there a few times already. So let me know if you want me to go.
Okay.
And I just want to question respectfully about that it's just the expense part of it. Because in the long run, it is more expensive to use chemicals and chemical fertilizer, because what you're doing is slowly over generations, and this may be why people don't see it. They're looking too short-sightedly. But slowly over generations, you are killing that beneficial bacteria balance in the soil, just like has happened in our bodies.
Yeah, he doesn't agree. He doesn't disagree with you there. He said that. Yeah.
Well, I'm just, my point is, so economically, it is not, it's more economically damaging to keep using chemicals and chemical fertilizers in the long run, because you're destroying your soil balance year after
Right.
year after year. That's my point.
And your
But-
health.
But what he's
And your
saying is
health.
that he is making it clear that each year, the amount of money that they would use to be buying chemicals is more than that year's worth of rent for these devices, that 1 year, right? That's what you're saying. You're looking at the short-term financial aspect.
Yeah, because I think everyone has to make a profit to feed their family. So how do we, lessen that burden right out of the gate? I don't disagree with you at all, Thomas. That's 100% true. And one of the reasons I got into no-till, by the way, is when we're in a boom and bust, drought, flood type situation, which is becoming more, it's happening. I mean, I'm living it all the time. And so when you're in no-till, just to give you an idea, why would someone do that? Why would they consider the chemicals? Well, actually, you can hold about 5 times the amount of rainwater per cubic foot with no-till when you've done it over time, because it allows the water to break the fall and to go inside, and you have a little less erosion that way. So those are kind of the early arguments for that. And so that's kind of what set me on that to start, because my first 2 years back farming, growing vegetables, we had 60 days over 100 degrees, I believe.
How long over time? You can hold 5 times the amount of rainwater with no-till over how much time? Like, how long do you think it takes for that to develop?
Most people are saying 5 to 8 years, to get into that, to where you have enough plant. What you're doing is you have roots in there, so you have residue on the top, breaks the fall, and then you have roots at the bottom so it can get through those spaces and store up. So that's why I started at that, and talked to my friend who's a geneticist, and he said, you should do this if you can figure out how to get the chemicals out. So
What do you charge the farmers per acre?
it varies. Right now it's about 25 an acre per pass.
$5?
Mhm.
Okay, well, that's very reasonable.
Hey, Clint.
So, one more reason about the expense thing is why it's more expensive to be organic is because they subsidize the commercial farmers. Why don't they subsidize the organic farmers?
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. And I see Mark shaking his head. It just makes no sense. It's cheaper to farm commercially because they subsidize the guys that are poisoning us.
Yeah, right. Well,
Look,
the good news
Mark's
is
more of an
government-
expert than I am, but the organic's hard, right? Like if you have a insect breakout, your residue on there is gone in a day, right? If you had to spray, you had to do something, whereas the synthetic can be out there for 30 days plus in sunlight. And I learned all these things, and you can get sick from the organic sprays too, but most of them are gone before they ever get to the grocery store. And so that's but yeah, organics difficult. It is a challenge. It is more expensive. That's why you have such a major market premium for it.
Clint, we have, this is Mark Dudla speaking. We have 20 no-till organic gardeners, some of which you're speaking to today. I took the little 2x4 and string and an angle iron and built 10 crimpers, 10, and sent them out across the country.
Oh, crimpers,
So
very good.
some of them planted cereal rye in the fall. And
Yeah.
I think Anne is going to eventually do a presentation, but
Mhm.
you're talking to some no-till organic gardeners here on this channel.
Yeah.
We got some hardcore people, man. You're sending
We
out
do.
small. Yeah,
Yeah.
and by the way, we are going to add crimpers to these, but this next gen bot I was talking about, Mark, basically allows you to choose a little more carefully when you want to terminate the rye. Or
Do
whatever.
these robots have the capability of planting the cover crop seed, or do you have to do that?
Yeah. He said, yes, they help with cover crop planting.
Yeah, and the idea there is if you're in a 30-inch row spacing, which a lot of crops are, not all, definitely not all. And that's where we're at right now. I can't win everything day one, but if you're in between those rows, then we could put those cover crops in early, which is what we're doing right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to add, Thomas, you talked about the subsidizing of GMO farming. This administration, one good thing that they did do was pass some funding for transitioning conventional crops to organic and regenerative ag. So they are funding it more. Tom Vilsack was the one that did that. And there's been some people that are from the Organic Trade Association and from Kiss the Ground and from some other groups. Moms Across America also sent in letters making requests to influence the committee that actually that advised Tom Vilsack. So we have put in our word on that, and many other organizations have. So, and Zach Bush, yes. So there are groups that have actually influenced Tom Vilsack and the U.S. government to invest in organic, transitioning to organic. So that is or regenerative organic. So that is happening. It is happening. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
the problem
it's
is
not as
Tom
much as
Vilsack
GMO farming,
ties
but
to Monsanto.
what's that?
I said the problem is Tom Vilsack and his former ties or maybe current ties to Monsanto.
Yes, but even then, he has approved and the government has approved funding for conventional crops to transition to regenerative agriculture. So that is happening. He has been convinced, and I think it's because of money primarily, that he's been told by actually Cargill and some very large food companies that they want GMOs labeled, or they want more regenerative organic farming because they can't export their products if it's not labeled and if it's toxic. These other countries, like even China, their acceptable levels of importing crops like GMO grain sprayed with glyphosate is like 96% lower than Japan's. Right. So President Trump went over to Japan and convinced President Abe to raise their levels of glyphosate allowances by 400 to 600%, and to allow multinational Monsanto GMO seeds in there. That's why his first stop was Japan, because Japan owns the largest grain distribution center in the world, and it's in Louisiana, Convent, Louisiana. They export hundreds of millions of pounds of grains every year, and essentially the Midwest farmers work for Japan because the Japanese government owns 85 different like grain distribution centers along the river, and they bring them to this Zenno agriculture center in the distribution grain center, which I have been to in Louisiana. And they do separate out about 6% of the grains are non-GMO, and they clean them and everything and all that, but they've been heavily attacked and criticized, and they're trying to get them to not do that. But the Japanese government has been the largest grain distribution center, owns the largest grain distribution center in the world. And if we got them to say, hey, we only want regenerative organic grains, we could transform the food system in 2 to 3 years. If we could get them to say, we only want regenerative organic grains, all these farmers in the Midwest would have to switch over. It would be tremendous and huge, and it could be done. It could be done. Decisions just need to be made. And a lot of technology, like Clint's technology, needs to be made available. And farmers need to be trained on how to switch over to regenerative organic ag. And I was really glad to hear tonight that you say that none of these farmers want to use chemicals. That is a huge, we're just so glad to hear that. Thank you so much, Clint. And somebody wants to know, are you working with drone technology too? I don't think so, because you're using the robots, right?
Actually, we use drones and they
You
fly
do?
they survey the fields for us. Yeah. Mhm.
Oh, wow.
We haven't built drones. With those we buy.
You buy
And
that,
we
okay.
actually firm out of Switzerland. But yeah, no, just to add what you're saying real quick, and then I'll be quiet and let it get on to Mark here. But the farmers don't want to do the things they're doing. It is because of margins. It is because of the way supply chains are set up. And I will tell you that even some of the folks that were at Monsanto and that have, decided, hey, this is too much, right? And I can tell you that I meet with these folks in ag all the time that you would think would hate my guts, and they actually don't. And so I think everyone recognizes change needs to come, and that's why I came up with the Greenfield, to make it easier to do this at scale using robots. Because I tried to do some of the things Mark's doing. I thought, man, this is hard as hell. This is hard to scale.
Yeah.
And
I don't know. I talk to him all the time and he's just sitting around doing nothing.
I'm sure Mark does. Yeah, I'm sure. He's what is it? The 4-hour work week? Is that he's probably got? So, so that's I want you guys to feel excited about that and what's coming. And there are other robotics companies developing different tools for different uses and stuff like that. But ours is really about scaling on these massive acres, doing that, and then hopefully we've got things that'll work for some of the smaller local farmers markets folks over the next few years as well.
Okay, great. And Thomas, do you have one more question? And we got to I think Mark wanted to add something too.
No, I'm fine. Thank you. And thank you for what you're doing there, sir.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks for fighting for us here.
you're making all of us a little more hopeful.
Yes, absolutely. Thank
That
you.
was kind of my goal to come on,
It is. We really appreciate that.
It's not
So
insurmountable.
our job now is to help spread the word about you and
Yep.
and then drag you to Washington DC.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm not very good at
You
politics.
can ride one
guys.
of your robots.
You don't have to be good at politics. All you have to do is say how efficient your machines are and how they will save money. Then, we'll take care of the rest. Don't worry.
Well, I think we do that.
yeah.
Then we get a bunch of farmers to come with us, because then they hear it directly from the customers.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do. And we're raising money for it right now. I just had a fundraising call today with some people about that. And I think if I call them back and tell them about this, they'll donate the money so we can pay for your flight and your hotels and stuff to get you there. It's in October, so keep it open. All right, so greenfieldcorporated.com, that's the link is in the chat. And yes, you've got moms at your back. So
I will be sending out all this information tomorrow. I don't have the LinkedIn link, but I'll go find that. I put the Facebook link in here.
And you can link in. Right now, we're not very sophisticated in marketing. That'll change in about a week when I get off project management. But we'll.
Yeah, I hear your website needs some help.
Easy. The people design. Can we cut that out of here? I don't want the people who designed it. You should have seen the one before this. So
Okay.
no, that's good.
All right. Well, you're working on it, so that's great. That'll be fabulous. All right. So we've got to go, folks. Thank you. I'm sorry, Pat. We'll get you to later.
Did Mark want to say anything?
Oh yeah, Mark. Yeah, I'm sorry, Mark. Yes. Mark. Ask to unmute. Okay. Oops, sorry.
You're muted.
Sorry, ask to unmute.
Thank you for investing in organic and investing the time. And there is a way. If there's a will, there's a way. And I think it's up to us. I mean, we have to do it. And, Zen's group can change this overnight as well. I mean, if you change your buying habits through the purse or the wallet, we can change this overnight. So it's about education, grassroots effort. And I think you're going to give us some technology that's there. I'm really excited if we can use this in specialty crops, things that people eat. Not that many people eat directly soybeans, but we do 10 dry beans, we do popcorn, we do sunflowers, do a whole bunch of other things. So I'm really excited to see this coming, and I can't wait.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Video. Let's see. Wow. So
they go pretty fast.
yeah. Clint, I want you to know that we have tested, this is going to be controversial to repost too, but we have tested for glyphosate in vaccines and found it positive in all childhood vaccines. And we believe this is because the grains, the soy that the pigs are eating, the grains, the soy and corn that
and the cattle.
Yeah, and the cattle are sprayed with glyphosate. It gets into their tendons. The tendons are ground up and put into gelatin, which is used as a stabilizing agent in vaccines. So if you can get glyphosate out of the crops of soy and corn and the grains that are fed to pigs and cattle, you'll be effectively getting glyphosate out of vaccines, which would be massive and could lower the autism epidemic. And I don't know how you feel about all that, but I'm just letting you put it out there that it's a very far reaching impact, and we super appreciate it. Thank you so much.
That's what that next robot's supposed to do.
Great.
These
Fantastic.
is the post plant, and the next one should get rid of all of them.
Great. Thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. We so appreciate you. Take care.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We're going to end the call. Thank you so much. Pat, just email us your question later. We so appreciate your time. Everybody, thank you so much and have a great night. And we'll see
Thanks,
you.
Clint.
Yeah,
Thanks, Mark.
take care,
Thanks, everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.